Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive with us here at KCC. This week, we're diving into Brother Tiku's sermon from this past Sunday. It was called The Law of Seasons. And it really got me thinking about, well, how the concept of seasons applies to pretty much every aspect of life.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, think about it. We see seasons in nature, obviously, but they also play out in our personal lives, in our relationships, even in our spiritual journeys.
You know what really grabbed my attention right off the bat? It was
What?
that palm tree illustration he used.
Yeah.
I mean, who would have thought palm fronds could be such a powerful symbol for the seasons of life?
Right. It was such a clever way to introduce the topic. He was talking about how young palm fronds shoot straight up,
Yeah.
but then they gradually start to bend towards the ground as they mature. And I think he was getting at this idea that growth and change often involve a sense of yielding, like adapting to new circumstances.
And it's a good reminder that none of us are exempt from those changes, those seasons. It doesn't matter who you are, how successful or wealthy you might be, you're going to experience those ups and downs.
Absolutely. He even used scripture to back that up, talking about how Jesus himself acknowledged the influence of timing and seasons.
Oh, yeah, he mentioned John 2.4 and Luke 22.53, right?
Exactly. Those passages really highlight how even Jesus recognized the importance of seasons.
So, okay, no one is exempt from the law of seasons. But Brother Tiku also made another really important point. He said that we don't just experience one season throughout our entire lives.
Right. That's so key. Think about the story of Joseph in Genesis 41. Talk about someone who went through some major shifts.
Oh, for sure. He went from being a slave to second in command in Egypt and then back down to prisoner.
Exactly. He experienced both abundance and famine, literally. And I think what's fascinating about Joseph's story is how it teaches us to leverage those seasons of abundance to prepare for potential scarcity.
It's like, what can we learn from Joseph's experience? He went through such extremes.
He did. But even in those extremes, he held on to his faith.
That's powerful. And speaking of seasons of abundance, Brother Tiku gave some really practical advice for making the most of those times, right?
He did. Remember those 3 action steps?
Oh, yeah. He started by talking about building capacity, which I think is so important, especially when things are going well.
It's easy to get complacent when life is good, isn't it? We forget to keep growing and developing.
Totally. But Brother Tiku was urging us to use those times of abundance to really invest in our spiritual growth.
He talked about deepening our prayer life, strengthening our relationship with God. And he didn't just stop at personal growth. He also emphasized the importance of building those strong, loyal friendships.
Yeah. He even brought up the example of David and Jonathan from 2 Samuel 9 to illustrate that kind of steadfast friendship.
That was a great example, like those friends who would stick their neck out for you no matter what.
It made me think about my own friendships and whether I have those kind of deep, loyal connections.
It's so easy to get caught up in the busyness of life and neglect those relationships that really matter.
For sure. Okay, so we've got building capacity and building strong relationships. What was that third action step, for navigating abundance?
Yes. The third point was all about being generous and investing in others.
I love that he didn't just say give money, but really emphasize the importance of transforming lives.
Absolutely. He talked about both material and spiritual investment.
And he gave some great examples from Scripture.
Like the centurion who built a synagogue.
Right, in Luke 7.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was Cornelius, whose generosity was remembered by God, from Acts 10.
Powerful examples of how our actions can ripple outward and impact others in ways we may never fully understand.
And, it doesn't always have to be about these grand gestures. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can make a huge difference in someone's life.
Couldn't agree more. Sometimes just a listening ear or a helping hand can mean the world to someone.
It's all about recognizing the needs around us and responding with compassion and generosity.
Well said. And I think that ties in perfectly with the overall message about seasons. Even when we might not be in a season of material abundance ourselves, we can always find ways to give and make a difference.
You're so right. It's about recognizing that we all have something to offer, no matter what season we're in.
And that by sharing our gifts and resources, we can help create a more just and compassionate world.
Absolutely. That's what it's all about.
So where do we go from here? What happens when those seasons shift?
Well, that's a great question, and I think that's where Brother Tiku's final point about mastering the cycles comes in.
Yes, mastering the cycles. Now that's a topic that deserves its own deep dive, wouldn't you say?
Definitely.
Yeah.
But I think we'll save that for next time. We don't want to give away all the good stuff at once, right?
Right. We need to keep our listeners coming back for more.
So stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive into the law of seasons, where we'll explore that concept of mastering the cycles in more detail.
It's going to be good.
All right, everyone, thanks for joining us
And we'll see you back here soon.
for another deep dive into faith and life right here at KCC.
Take care.
Yeah.
So last time we were talking about making the most of seasons of abundance. You know, those times when things are going well.
Right, those times when you feel like you're on top of the world.
Exactly. But as we all know, life isn't always sunshine and roses.
Yeah, there are going to be those times when the storms roll in.
And that's where Brother Tiku's final point about mastering the cycles comes in.
Ah, yes. Mastering the cycles. That's where things get really interesting.
Because it's one thing to recognize that seasons exist, but it's another thing entirely to understand how to navigate them effectively.
Okay, so how do we do that? How do we master these cycles?
Well, Brother Tiku started by reminding us that just as day follows night, and summer gives way to autumn, so too do the seasons in our lives ebb and flow.
I mean, that's just the natural order of things, right?
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
like the tide coming in and going out.
But sometimes it feels like those tides can really catch us off guard.
You know, like when things are going well, we tend to assume they'll always be that way. And then when things get tough, it can feel like the world is ending.
I've totally been there.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get caught up in the moment and lose sight of the bigger picture.
Absolutely. And that's why Brother Tiku challenged us to cultivate a sense of awareness, to be mindful of the season we're in and make choices accordingly.
Okay, so instead of just reacting to what's happening around us, we need to be proactive and make decisions that are aligned with the season, right?
Exactly. He even used a verse from Chronicles to illustrate this point. It was 1 Chronicles 12.32.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one.
It talks about the men of Issachar, who understood the times and knew what Israel should do.
Powerful stuff. So basically, we need to be like those men of Issachar. We need to understand the times and know what to do.
Right. We need to be students of our own lives, you know, paying attention to the patterns and cycles.
And then using that knowledge to make wise decisions.
Precisely. Now, remember that analogy he used about the ants?
Oh, the ants from Proverbs, yeah.
Proverbs 30.25, to be exact.
Okay, so what was it about the ants again?
Well, he was pointing out how those little creatures are incredibly wise when it comes to understanding the importance of preparation.
Like how they gather food in the summer to sustain them through the winter.
Exactly. They know that winter is coming, so they prepare accordingly.
It's like they're mastering their own little cycles.
They are. And it's a great reminder for us that even when times are good, we should be thinking ahead, planning for the future, and building resilience for when those inevitable challenges arise.
You know, it's funny because I've always thought of ants as being these tiny, insignificant creatures. But they're actually quite remarkable when you think about it.
They are. They're a great example of how even the smallest creatures can teach us valuable lessons about life.
So we need to be like the ants, always prepared.
Absolutely. But just like ants work together as a colony, Brother Tiku also reminded us that we don't have to go through these seasons alone either.
Right. We have each other for support, encouragement, and accountability.
That's so important. It's like we're not meant to navigate life in isolation. Having a community, a support system to lean on can make all the difference.
Whether we're celebrating victories or going through tough times.
He wrapped up by emphasizing that while we can't control the seasons of life, we can control how we respond to them.
Now that's empowering.
It means we have a choice in how we navigate each season, even when things feel difficult or uncertain.
And ultimately, it's about trusting in God's faithfulness, right?
Absolutely. Knowing that he is with us through every season, whether it's one of sunshine or rain.
Well said. So how do we put all of this into practice? What are some tangible steps we can take to master these cycles in our own lives?
That's a great question, and I think it deserves some serious reflection. Maybe we can dive into that next time.
Sounds good to me.
So we've been talking about mastering the cycles, those ups and downs that we all face in life.
And you know what really struck me from Brother Tiku's message? It was that sense of hope, that reminder that even when things feel uncertain, God is with us.
Oh, absolutely. He really emphasized that, didn't he? That even in the midst of change, God is constant.
And I thought he did such a great job of taking these big, abstract ideas and making them relatable.
Right, like that palm tree analogy. Who knew palm fronds could be so insightful?
And the story of Joseph. Talk about someone who went through some serious ups and downs.
But even in those extremes, he held on to his faith, and God used him in incredible ways.
It's like No matter what season we're in, there's a purpose to it.
Exactly. And that's where the idea of mastering the cycles comes in. It's about recognizing that each season has its own unique lessons and opportunities.
Like, remember the ant analogy. They're always prepared, even when times are good.
Right. They know that winter's coming, so they work hard to store up provisions.
It's a great reminder for us to be wise stewards of the resources and opportunities we're given.
Absolutely. And to remember that we don't have to go through these seasons alone.
That's so key. We have each other, our community of faith, to support and encourage us along the way.
Whether we're celebrating victories or facing challenges, we're in it together.
And that's what makes this journey of faith so beautiful, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into the law of seasons,
I hope you're leaving with a sense of hope and empowerment.
that you're not just a passive passenger in life, but an active participant in your own journey.
And that no matter what season you're in, God is with you.
And don't forget, if you want to dive deeper into Brother Tiku's message,
The full sermon is available on our KCC YouTube channel.
you can find it at KCC AOG, Old Town, Swindon, UK.
We've got all our past sermons there too, so be sure to check them out.
And as you go about your week, we'd love for you to consider this. What season are you in right now? And what steps can you take to make the most of it?
Remember, each season has its own beauty and its own lessons.
And by embracing them with an open heart and a willingness to trust in God's plan.
We can truly flourish, no matter what life throws our way.
Thanks for joining us for another deep dive here at KCC.
We'll see you next time.